All right. Welcome everyone to the COVID Loan Tracker times Bench times SBA webinar for PPP Forgiveness and EIDL. I'd like to give everyone a warm welcome, especially the holiday season. I know there's a lot of people anxious about forgiveness and these topics, and so we're going to dig into it today. I want to start by welcoming Paige Avery from Bench. I think you guys know a little bit about COVID Loan Tracker. We've been doing this for a while. We exist, basically, we spring up alongside COVID and PPP to help small businesses understand how to navigate this whole process. And Bench is a partner of ours who's been great and helped so many small businesses. So we'd like to welcome Paige. Paige, if you want to introduce yourself briefly.
Hi, Duncan. Thank you so much and welcome everyone. I work as a small business advisor at Bench Accounting. What we do is we offer essentially unlimited support, monthly bookkeeping, an easy to use portal. The real focus here is we provide unlimited support and monthly reporting for our clients. So essentially helping them with PPP, EIDL, and of course, the thing you hate most, bookkeeping and tax filing.
Great.
Thank you so much, Dustin.
And of course, welcome and thank you to the SBA, the New Mexico office. We're most grateful to them. We have Roxana Chicas, Sarah Branch, and Shelly Brown who are helping us today. And so without further adu, why don't we jump into the deck? Are you ready, Sarah?
Yes, we are. Thank you guys for having us here again. We've been keeping New Mexico updated. We're from the SBA New Mexico Albuquerque District Office. We've been doing PPP loan forgiveness and EIDL issues, solutions, and frequently asked questions for us here in the state of New Mexico, but this goes for other members of the nation who are small business owners. You can see Shelly Brown's picture there on the left. Roxana Chicas is in the middle, and I'm right there on the right, and we'll be here to help you today and get through these slides. Next slide, please. So today on our agenda, we will be discussing SBA Resource Partners that are available throughout the nation. We also will be discussing PPP Forgiveness, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as EIDL, the application process, issues and reporting those issues, solutions and recovering from maybe those issues you may have had, and Q&A. And we'll be taking answers, your questions, and giving answers in. You should have a chat box, and Shelly Brown will be answering those questions. We'll also discuss those questions out loud, so feel free to ask at any point in time. All right, so I'm going to hand the floor over to Roxana. She'll be doing the rest of the SBA introduction and PPP forgiveness.
Thank you, Sarah. So here at the SBA, we service 36 million small businesses that are the driving force of the American economy and are essential to America's economic rebound from the global pandemic. Now we're committed to ensuring that the PPP loan data does not harm small businesses or their employees. Next slide, please. Now, one way to stay connected with your local SBA is to go to the SBA.gov website. You could go to our lender match, which will lead you to available lenders in your area that work with the SBA and can assist you with your loans. You could also find the SBA near you. And if you sign up for our email updates, you'll stay up to date with everything, with all the information that we have as far as PPP, EIDL, or anything in your area. Next slide, please. And of course, you could go to the sba.gov /updates in order to get that. You'll receive the newsletter, which includes everything. Again, each SBA has their own district, and they'll go ahead and inform you for anything in your area. So right now we'll go over some information of the PPP loan data. The PPP loans were made by lending institutions and then guaranteed by the SBA. The lender reviews the borrower's application, approves the loan, and then submits the information to the SBA. As of right now, the PPP, of course, has been closed, and majority of lenders are taking the PPP loan forgiveness. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So all PPP loans are subject to SBA review, and all loans are over $2 million will be automatically reviewed. Eligibility and compliance will be reviewed during the loan forgiveness process. And the public PPP data includes only active loans. Loans that were canceled for any reason are not included in the public data release. And of course, this is public information, so it's we feel that we need to go ahead and advise everyone that you could go ahead and do that yourself. Now, the PPP loan data reflects the information submitted by lenders to the SBA for PPP loans. Approximately 75% of PPP loans did not include any demographic information at the time of loan application. Forgiveness application expressly requested demographic information for borrowers so that the SBA could better understand which businesses are benefiting from the PPP loans. We'll go over the SBA Resource Partners. The SBA works with over 1,400 partners nationwide, and you can find your local resource partners near you. You can find those at the sba.gov/local-assistance. Again, they're approved and funded by the SBA, and they're there to help you with anything with your economic injury loan or receiving a loan, anything that would help you benefit your business. And we'll cover the funding options by the SBA. As we spoke about the payment protection program, they're no longer accepting applications, but they are accepting forgiveness applications. And the economic injury disaster loan, EIDL for short, is currently accepting applications for the loan. The EIDL advance is no longer available, and you could apply at the COVID-19 relief.sba.gov. We'll go over some information of the PPP forgiveness. If you're a borrower of the PPP forgiveness, you must submit documentation to request forgiveness to your lender. You're going to either submit Form 3508, 3508EZ for businesses with no reduction in employees, and 3508S for businesses with 50,000 PPP loan or less. And all forms require supporting documentation. I believe if you go to the SBA.gov website or on the slide, it'll show you exactly. Actually, if you go to the SBA.gov website, all the forms and instructions for each of them are located there. Next slide, please. So the forgiveness process goes as submitting in the information to your lender. You complete and submit your loan forgiveness application to your lender within 10 months, depending on whichever form you need to use. Your lender will review that, and they have 60 days from the receipt of the application to issue a decision to the SBA. If partially or fully approved, the lender must request payment from the SBA, and the final step will be that the payment will be issued. The SBA will make a payment including accrued interest to the lender within 90 days. The lender notifies the borrower of the forgiveness amount. Now, these are some FAQs that had have come to us, and we decided to go ahead and put this out there since it was something that has been continuously asked. Now, how should a lender handle any remaining balance on a PPP loan after the SBA remits the forgiveness amount to the lender? Be advised that if a PPP loan is not forgiven, it's in full, including if there has been a reduction in forgiveness amount for the EIDL advance, the remaining balance due on the PPP loan must be repaid by the borrower. The lenders must notify the borrower of the loan forgiveness amount remitted by the SBA and the date on which the borrower's first loan payment is due. The lender must continue to service your loan, and the borrower must repay the remaining loan balance by the maturity date of the PPP loan, which is either 2 or 5 years. And one of the most frequently asked questions is, what should a lender do if a borrower received an EIDL advance in excess of the amount of its PPP? Borrowers will not receive any forgiveness. The amount of the EIDL advance is deducted from the PPP loan forgiveness amount. The lender is responsible for notifying the borrower of the date on which the borrower's first loan payment is due. The lender must continue to service the loan, and the borrower must repay the remaining loan balance by the maturity date of the PPP loan. And I just need to go ahead and point this out, that if you're a business that received an EIDL advance in addition to the PPP loan, you will have that amount of the EIDL advance subtracted from your forgiveness amount on the PPP loan forgiveness. Now I'll go ahead and turn this over to Sarah so she could cover the economic injury disaster loan.
Thank you, Roxana. So for EIDL, the economic injury disaster loan, we want you guys to know that it is not forgivable. It is a loan, and it's a loan accruing interest at 3.75, and for nonprofits, it's at 2.75%, and its term is up to 30 years. Payments are deferred for 12 months from when the funds were dispersed, and borrowers are responsible for all accrued interest. And interest begins from the time you use those funds. So I've been seeing some questions pop up in our Q&A chat box asking about, will EIDL be forgiven? Is EIDL forgiven? That's a big one, that it's not forgiven right now. It is a loan. And you can still apply till the end of the year, but at the end of the year, as of right now, that's still being discussed if there'll be a second round of PPP, if EIDL will continue. It's currently being discussed. We're waiting to hear as the SBA for an answer, but right now you can apply to the end of the year. Just remember, it is a loan, and it's a loan that is a term up to 30 years. So EIDL repayment, you can always repay. I've seen some repayment questions in the chat box as well. And you can see that payoff number up at the top of your screen. If you're missing information like your EIDL number, you can call them as well and give them your information, and they'll be able to look that up for you. But to ensure you pay off the full amount owed, including interest and fees, contact your service office. Request a payoff amount prior to submitting the payment. We've had some people call about the interest, that they had paid off all their amount, and they felt like they were good, but the SBA is still expecting payment on the interest, because when you use the money, interest starts accruing. Applicants will receive a statement from the SBA that includes payment amount, balance, and due date, or you can visit our website at pay.gov, use the SBA 1201 borrower payment form, and enter your required information, including your 10-digit EIDL number and the SBA loan number. Those are important numbers, but again, if you don't have that number or you've lost it, you can always call our customer service and they'll be able to get you the correct information. All right, so one of the questions we received from our local area was, how can I check the status of my application? And applicants who are approved will receive an invite to log into the customer portal. Sometimes people have had issues logging into the customer portal. You can always call our customer service number that's at the bottom of your screen, and they'll be able to get you back in and log into that portal. If your loan is not approved, make sure that you read the decline letter. It'll have in bolded letters, maybe insufficient information or something to do with your credit score. Make sure you read that letter and you'll be able to resubmit your information, but you have to do it before the end of the year, because once they close EIDL, you're closed. If you were approved and let's say the end of the year comes, you're still in the system and they'll help you out. But if you haven't been approved by the end of the year, it's going to close. Next slide, please. Okay. What if I need more money than I've been approved for? Again, because EIDL is closing at the end of the year, once EIDL is closed at the end of the year, it's closed as of right now. So if you were approved as soon as possible, send an email to that email on the screen with subject line increase, stating your need for the increase to the loan amount, and include additional information that may assist your reconsideration. For example, your federal tax return or your 4506-T form. Okay, so reporting identity theft. As we said before, you will receive a letter that states your payment amount. It will have your loan number on it, and it will have your other information that you submitted on your application. We've had so much identity theft though, and we've seen unauthorized use of your name and address, a credit card or bank account numbers, social security numbers, phone or utility account numbers, and even medical insurance numbers. If your identity was stolen and used to apply for EIDL assistance from the SBA, we've put 6 steps together, and be sure to act quickly to just manage your financials to make sure nothing is lost or damaged. So the first step you're going to want to take that we're recommending to anyone who's calling us with maybe an elderly family member that's been taken advantage of, or maybe your child's name has gotten out there, or you yourself, place a fraud alert on your credit reports, and you can see where you can go for Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Their numbers also good for you to report fraud alert or put a freeze on your account, which is good up to 7 years. Step 2, this is one of the most important steps, is identitytheft.gov. That will file a report about your situation. And once you've received that report, save it, because you can take that to the police department. You can use it for some other information that we'll give you in a minute. But go to identitytheft.gov for your second step. Third step is file that identity theft report with your local police department, and you may want to use that report, or they may ask for it from that identitytheft.gov. Step 4 is contact the Social Security Administration as soon as possible. Even if you're not sure your number has been compromised, call them or submit a report online at oig.ssa.gov. Next, you're going to go to the SBA OIG, which is Office of Inspector General, call their number or visit the website, and they'll be able to report your fraud case. And finally, report your fraud case to SBA customer service by calling them, or I recommend sending an email to disastercustomerservice@sba.gov with the information that you've maybe gone to the police department, you've put in a freeze on your credit, you've gotten your identity theft. Try and get all that information together before, so you can just send one email and they can handle your case right away instead of hunting more information down for you.
And just one thing to add, I'll say it again later, but we're going to send this deck out to everyone that registered for the webinar. So if you're not catching all these contact numbers and et cetera, you'll have it in an email by tomorrow morning.
Awesome. Thanks, Duncan.
Sure.
So these are good practices for recovering from identity theft. Obtain and review copies of your credit report immediately. I know a lot of people do this, but sometimes elderly couples, I've been hearing a lot that they don't regularly do this. So if you have a loved one that you're looking after, check for yourself and check for them too. Look for accounts and inquiries and addresses that you don't recognize. If there are items on your credit report you don't recognize, contact the credit bureau involved. Include a copy of your identity theft report and proof of your identity, and explain which of the information is fraudulent and request that they block that information. This will keep it from showing up on your credit report. If you are flagged for fraudulent activity, notify any other companies where you know the identity has been stolen. Explain your situation and ask them to close your account. And make sure you request a letter confirming that the fraudulent activity isn't yours and that you're not liable for it. And that it was removed from your credit report, but make sure you save all this documentation. If you get a collection letter for a debt that you don't owe, write the debt collector within 30 days of getting the letter. Tell them your identity was stolen and you don't owe that debt. They may request a copy of your identity theft report and other documentation about the theft. And review your bills and credit reports regularly. That's a best practice to identify any new fraudulent charges. And some of the fraud scams, if you were contacted about an SBA grant, that is not legitimate. SBA for a while had the economic injury disaster advance that Roxana talked about a little bit ago. Make sure that if someone says, hey, you know, we have a grant for you from the SBA, suspect fraud. We're not doing anything around that. Loans, if you are contacted by someone promising to get approval of an SBA loan, but requires upfront payment or high interest, suspect fraud. If you have a question about getting SBA disaster loan, call our customer service, email at disastercustomerservice@sba.gov, or call our answer desk or email at answerdesk@sba.gov. We'll give you an answer. We have people calling in about calls, emails, sometimes texts they receive, letters in the mail. They're attacking you on all ends, and we'll verify that for you. We're here for you. And phishing, this is a big one. If you're applying for an SBA loan and receive email correspondence asking for personal identifiable information, ensure that the reference application number is consistent with the actual application number. Look out for phishing attacks and scams by using our SBA logo. These may be attempts to obtain your personal banking access or install ransomware or malware on your computer. And any email communication from the SBA will come from accounts ending with sba.gov. The presence of an SBA logo on a web page does not guarantee the information is accurate or endorsed by us at the SBA. So make sure you cross-reference any information you receive with information available at our sba.gov website. We're going to have a Q&A section now. And Shelly has been answering a lot of these questions. We've added some questions from our local area, but because of time, I'm wondering if we should read through some of the chat questions that we've been receiving.
Yeah, sure. Give me a moment. I think I have to exit out of the screen to see that.
Okay.
Where do I? Let's see here. Should we go to the chat or the Q&A?
There's some that Shelly wanted to answer live, it looks like.
Okay, let's do
I'll
that.
pass the mic over to Shelly.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I was trying to go through, there's some on here that I just need to do some clarification on, and there's quite a few of them. So I do want to stress right now the EIDL loan. It is a loan, it is not forgivable. The PPP is the loan that is forgivable, and that is through the lender that you got the funds from the PPP. So you would need to apply for the forgiveness through the PPP lender. The EIDL is a direct loan from SBA, and that is not forgivable. If you applied for an EIDL loan and you received an advance, if you did not receive a PPP loan, that advance then does not have to be paid back. If you receive the PPP loan, then SBA will deduct that advance from the PPP loan when the lender submits to SBA the forgivable application. We will deduct that EIDL advance and then send the remaining balance to the lender. With that being said, as of now, as we speak right now, Congress is working on another COVID-19 bill, and there could be some changes in there. In addition to that, there is this rumor going out there that there's going to be automatic forgiveness. I seriously doubt there'll be any automatic forgiveness, which means if you have a loan, they just say, okay, you don't have to pay it back. I seriously do not believe that will occur. What could occur, though, and what has been said, is that it's quite possible that it will be even more simplified. So SBA came out with, and Treasury, SBA and Treasury came out with the form 3508S. For any loan that is less than $50,000, you can use that form. On that form, there's a section where you do not have to prove your loss of employees or loss of FTEs. It is just for monitoring for SBA. What was your head count prior to this pandemic, and what is it now? You don't have to show the full-time equivalent employees on that form like you do on the other forms. But so with there will be no, I don't believe there's going to be any automatic forgiveness. There may be a more simplified version where you're certifying, similar to what you do with your tax returns. You're certifying that everything is true and correct, and you submit it. But automatic forgiveness, the chances are there will not be. That you still have to sign something certifying that yes, you did use the money as indicated, and you submit that to the lender. So automatic forgiveness, highly doubtful, maybe more simplified, it's possible, but with it going back and forth in Congress as we speak, there's nothing concrete that we can give you on that. So those were questions that kept coming through, so I wanted to be clear on that. Then let me see, I have one, again, the EIDL loan is not forgivable, that one keeps coming through. So if you did receive somebody sent in a question that said, I submitted a PPP forgiveness application to a bank. And then in the portal, it showed that they received the advance for $2,000. So the lender is going to send in and asking for forgiveness for the full PPP amount. They do not subtract out that EIDL advance. Once SBA receives it, SBA will deduct that EIDL advance and send the difference to the lender. Then the lender will contact you and let you know what the outstanding balance is. And 30 days from there, your payments will begin and they'll indicate what that payment amount will be. So payments would be made to the lender after that. Another thing that came up, which Sarah covered, was the new policy procedure notice that came out by the IRS and the information notice that came out by the IRS about the PPP deductions or expense deductions. So if you used funds to pay your expenses, you use PPP funds to pay your expenses, and those expenses were forgiven through the PPP loan, then as of now, you are not allowed to deduct those expenses that were paid for by the PPP loan. So that's a common question that keeps coming up.
Thanks.
Came up again, are expenses paid with the PPP loan not deductible as of now? No, because the IRS considers that double dipping. So the government already paid those expenses through the PPP and it was forgiven to you. And then to deduct them from your IRS tax forms, they feel that it's double dipping. That could change as well. So without any information, we cannot really comment on it, whether or not it will be changed. So it's important that you keep your eye on the news, on our website, on the Treasury website for any new information that comes out, because it will be posted there as well as it will be on the news. We are currently
Thanks, Shelley.
Yes?
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, Paige is an expert in the tax side. So whenever you're finished with the Q&A, I'm going to turn it over and ask Paige some questions about taxes and how
that's
best
perfect
practice.
I'll leave that to her. Thank you. We are currently received an EIDL loan. I'm selling my business on January 21. How do I transfer the loan responsibility? You cannot transfer that loan responsibility. You are you're the one that took out that loan. That loan belongs to you. You can contact the disaster center and speak to them. But as of now, that is not a transferable loan. Same with the PPP loan. If you're selling your business and there's a PPP loan, you have to put the money in escrow for that loan to be paid off, and lenders are aware of that as well. If your business closes and you have an EIDL loan, you're still responsible to make that payment. You're still responsible for that loan. Same with the PPP. So if your business has closed, you can still apply for the forgiveness as long as you have all your supporting documentation. So that loan will be forgiven, even if your business is closed and you have all that information. There is questions about the lenders not received or not accepting applications for forgiveness. That is an institutional decision, and why they're not, I don't know. That's why it's continue to work with your lender. I did look up some of the larger banks, and it indicated that they will be sending out emails, and so to look in your email box. So double check your junk file to make sure that something didn't go into there. But they should be accepting them. All documentation is out, but maybe too they are waiting to see if there's going to be any new congressional changes.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. So, Paige, if you don't mind, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Absolutely.
I guess two nuts and bolts questions to begin. And this is a common one. So let's just pick up where sort of Shelley just hit. So if you could give us some ideas of best practices around taxes, there's been a lot of confusion among small businesses about how to do this. Everyone's kind of aware of double dipping, but no one's quite sure what that means. So if you could walk us through a little bit of that.
Okay. I mean, taxes in general definitely depends on entity structure, what loans they received. It's quite complex. That's one of the reasons why we offer our free consultations, which we're happy to talk about further down the line. But the main thing to keep in mind is one, knowing, so for a lot of sole proprietors, a lot of people reached out and they applied for PUA and PPP, so Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. There's a lot of acronyms at play, I know, as well as the Paycheck Protection Program. So this would be an area where the government would view it as essentially double dipping. You're essentially saying that you're unemployed, but you're also employed by your business. So this is an area to be mindful of. Some business owners had a little bit of layover of a couple weeks. Definitely something to check in with your tax preparer. If you can contact your local state unemployment and make sure that you're up to date on those regulations as well. But that's one main area where I do hear of business owners double dipping. The other main area where I do regularly hear of business owners, not necessarily double dipping, but something to be mindful of, is going to claim tax deductions for PPP. So the IRS wants to make sure that if you believe that you will reasonably be able to get your PPP forgiven for 2020, they want you to declare this as the PPP funding that you've received. It's not taxable income, and you also cannot deduct the expenses that you've used for PPP. Now, this sounds like a simple thing. What it means is you can't then claim payroll as an expense. You also cannot claim if you're using it, say, for rent, for mortgage interest, your phone bills, your internet, basically for your utilities. You also then couldn't claim the portion that you use PPP to pay those expenses. You have to make sure that, sorry there. You want to make sure that you don't declare those as tax deductions for your 2020 tax return. Did that answer your question?
Excellent advice. Yes.
Fantastic.
And more generally, basic, simple question, but I think one that's on a lot of people's minds. What about how long to get forgiven once you've applied for it?
Right. So once you've submitted the application with your lender, all in with both the lender and the SBA, you can expect to wait 150 days to be precise. So you will be potentially waiting some time. What this means is that many business owners will not receive a notice of whether they've been forgiven within the year of 2020.
Okay, that's very important to note, and probably a little
Extremely.
bit for people.
Yeah.
So I have one note on this I'd like to bring up just as COVID loan tracker. So we've recently done a survey with a bunch of small businesses. And so this is for everyone listening. And we ask about the stage of forgiveness that people were in. And so basically the respondents fell into 4 different groups. So a quarter of people said it took them less than 30 days, which was very encouraging. And then a third said it took them 31 to 60 days. And another third said it took them more than 60 days. And perhaps the most disconcerting, 20% of people that are not processing yet, not even communicated with them anything about forgiveness. And it's because some of the lenders are waiting to do anything because they know the protocols may change with a new congressional package or new guidance from the SBA. So anyway, just an update from our community about how long it seems to be taking on the ground. The majority of people have said that by 60 days, they've gotten confirmation that they had it forgiven, or at least it got what is not forgiven. So just wanted to add that. So then another question for you, Paige. So this is an interesting one that I hope applies to a lot of small businesses because it's encouraging, which is, let's say earlier in the year, you took a PPP loan, And now your business is doing better and you're able to pay yourself more than $100,000 because of that. Does that affect forgiveness? Because as everyone knows, there was some element about $100,000 cap on income and how much you could pay for PPP. So if you could clarify that for people, it's especially, I assume, relevant for sole props.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of businesses and industries that continue to fortunately thrive during this time. So with the $100,000 cap, that's specifically related to how you would calculate the amount that you would receive initially for PPP. So calculating 2.5 months worth of quote unquote payroll. So if you've managed to receive more than 100,000 this year, congratulations, that's exciting. But that wouldn't impact your ability to get the full amount of PPP forgiven. It was put in place as an acknowledgement that business owners were struggling or would potentially struggle throughout this year. So it's acknowledging that time where many of us went into lockdown, had to shelter in place, et cetera. So whether you've received more money over the course of this year, it does not negate your ability to get the loan fully forgiven. The PPP loan specifically.
Thank you, Paige. That's nice and clear, and I assume good news for those of the small business owners who are doing better after reopening.
Absolutely.
Can we go over, I guess, one big question everyone has, and I know it's sort of perfunctory, and we did it a little bit in the SBA, but if we could just talk about it, is what documents you need to show for forgiveness. And in particular, there's a significant amount of anxiety among sole proprietors who pay themselves perhaps more or have historically paid themselves more informally than through a payroll provider and so forth. So what kind of proof of payment to oneself would you find as a best practice for the forgiveness application?
Yeah, excellent question. I get this very often. We do work with a lot of sole proprietors because we do work with a lot of small business owners. So one main thing, now I should preface this, it's always great to check in with your lender. Your lender is there to support you. You are their client. They do want to work alongside you to make sure that you get this forgiven. So I do always want to make that clear. You can absolutely always reach out to your lender. One key thing that they may look for is they may ask to, I know it sounds redundant, bear with me, but they may ask to review again your 2019 Schedule C. Because you don't pay yourself on a traditional salary where you would be submitting documents like 941s, that's a-okay. Other documents that the lender might ask for are bank statements, mortgage payments. They may ask to see utility contracts. So the key thing here is, first and foremost, I would check with your lender. There is a varying degree of the information that lender to lender will ask you for. But main thing to keep in mind is keep great records, keep your bank statements, any contracts that would apply for the funding. So phone bill, internet, transportation is another one as well. Again, and mortgage interest payments. So if you use PPP for any of those, as well as paying yourself a paycheck, aka you could pay the full amount to yourself and that would suffice. But if any of those funds were used for any of the aforementioned options, you want to make sure you keep those records.
Okay, that's very useful to know. So let's, as kind of related to this, can we walk through the eligibility for the different forms that are in existence, and so who should use which form, and then also, I guess this is more of an SBA question, but still in general, if you're a small business right now, is it worth applying for forgiveness this month, or does it seem reasonably likely that the forms are going to change with the new congressional package and it's smarter to wait until January, assuming you still are within the window of the 10 months before interest and payments start? So if we could walk through sort of the form eligibility, just so everyone's clear on who can use what, and then that latter question is also relevant.
Yeah, fantastic. So first and foremost, starting off with, I'll knock this one off. It's kind of the low-hanging fruit. Any small business owner that does not have any employees, aka they are a self-employed individual, so be it a single member LLC, being a sole proprietor, Or being a 1099 contractor, they're also viewed as a sole proprietor. So again, with no employees, the amount that you would have received for PPP would be under the 50,000 threshold. So you can automatically go to the form 3508S. It's the most simplistic form and it's easy to do. With that form, a lot of business owners do ask me, do I need to include all of my rent expenses during the time that I had PPP? Do I need to include my utilities, etc.? The answer is no. You only need to complete the line items that apply to where the funding for PPP went. So at the very end of it all, the amount that you should have declared on that form is the amount of PPP that you received. So again, 3508S is going to be the best form for any self-employed individual without payroll. So again, this would be the easiest form that they would want to complete.
Okay, that's most useful. Thank you for that.
So
go ahead.
may
Yes.
I add on? May I add to that?
I was
Paige?
going to say, there's a caveat. Please do, Shelley.
Well, this comes up quite often, and as you said, if somebody is wanting to have their payroll forgiven, and not necessarily just themselves, but if they've hired contractors and those contractors are, again, contractors or 1099, you cannot deduct those as payroll costs because that person is considered self-employed. So our lenders are getting a lot of that right now, and they don't want to tell the borrower no, but it is no. If they are a 1099 and you contract them, you cannot deduct that as payroll paid. And some borrowers have been doing that even though they shouldn't, because that person should have applied for a PPP themselves.
Okay, very, very important note. And Shelley, about the forgiveness timeline, if you were a small business, would you just do it now, or would you wait to January on the chance Congress changes the sort of forgiveness process?
Well, that we're being told, everybody, if you can apply, but I understand why people are waiting. I understand why banks are holding off. So that's going to be up to the individual, especially if it's a large loan. You may want to consider waiting. The smaller loan, anything under 50,000, that 3508 S is a more simplified form. But there is talk of the advance, maybe something happening with that and maybe not being deducted. But again, that's just talk. We don't know what's going to be in that bill. So we can only go by what it is now, today, right now. Is, if you have it, you're ready to apply, you can. If your lender is accepting it, then do that. Always check with your lender's website to find out what their process is, because some of the larger lenders are just not, they're not moving as quickly. And then some are using a third party processing to do that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was very useful. So Paige, a question for you here. So a single owner LLC who is started up in 2019, June 2019. And she's wondering, is taking 2.5 months of your Schedule C from 2019 the only way to prove your income and what you can pay yourself? Or is there any other way to do it? Because she says that in this case, if she did that calculation, it would leave her paying back 1/3 of her loan. And I know a lot of people are in this position. So I'm wondering if you could give guidance on calculating your income and what you're eligible for in terms of payments. So what's forgivable?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a cutoff for last year for when new business owners would be able to actually use January and February's numbers with the support of a bookkeeper or tax preparer. But being that she started in June, or the business owner started in June, we would be looking to use 2019's tax return. So the numbers from 2019. The main question that I do have there is, so this is something that has come up where business owners provided numbers to the SBA before they in fact filed, or before they had a tax preparer review their numbers. So I have spoken to many business owners who received a substantially more funding than they should have. So that's always something to be mindful of as well. But the key here is, I guess what I'm wondering is, where did the net income for 2019 come into play for them to receive the amount that they did? That would be my first main question to ask that business owner.
Okay, so actually, so anyone in that position, maybe that's a good point to have a consultation with someone at Bench to figure that
Absolutely.
out. If you're in that position.
Absolutely. And we're happy to do so.
So I have a question now that we hear all the time, and I'm pretty sure this is a no, but I think it'd be good to cover it. Is we have a question which is, I heard I can roll my EIDL into my PPP for forgiveness. How do I do that?
Yeah, there's no rolling it into the PPP for forgiveness. And in fact, as we've mentioned already, if they say had an EIDL grant, as it stands today, I do like to usually preface with my calls that things may change. There may be new information coming out from Congress soon. However, as it stands right now, if they received an advance, so EIDL advance, that actually does get taken into consideration in the forgiveness of PPP, meaning as it stands right now, it'll be less that you'll receive from the PPP loan forgiveness process. So long and the short of it is, you cannot roll it into your PPP.
Okay, thanks for the clarity on that.
My pleasure.
So here's another question that we got. It's an interesting one that I don't think we've had before, which was, the question was specific to an independent contractor, but I think it relates to everyone, is if you have an EIDL loan, so not EIDL advance, what special annual reporting requirements exist? So like, what sort of reporting infrastructure does a business need if it's an EIDL borrower?
Yeah, so there's no special reporting that would be singled out for an independent contractor. Of course, you always want to keep great records, as you are submitting your tax filings at end of year to the IRS. So all EIDL borrowers in general are responsible for ensuring that they spend the funds on the eligible expenses. So essentially, it can only be used for working capital, day-to-day expenses, and you want to make sure that you're recording what you're using EIDL for. But as far as having different books than any other business, it's exactly the same. You want to be tracking, your day-to-day revenue and expenses throughout the year.
Okay, great. And I'll say it once more, even though it's been said many times, EIDL loans are not forgivable. They're loans.
Correct.
So I want to transition back to sort of Sarah and Roxana. You covered in your deck a little bit about how a business could increase the size of their EIDL loan. And we had a couple questions about that. Someone said, if you received an EIDL and I'm about to exhaust it, I think I'm eligible for more. How would I go about doing that? So if you guys could just talk about the eligibility for doing that, or what information they need to submit, I think it would be useful for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. So let me just cover that. COVID-19, make sure I'm not muted, but COVID-19,
We can hear you.
great. EIDL loans can be modified by increasing the amount up to 6 months of working capital. And an increase can be requested either before or after accepting the loan. Right now, it sounds like a lot of people have already accepted the loan. But if applicants feel like it's urgent and you do need the funds, especially with this deadline coming up soon, make sure you send an email to that. I put a couple of the emails in the chat box, but I'll say it again. It's pdcrecons@sba.gov. Within the subject line, putting increase in all capital letters, and include any additional information that may assist us in considering an increase for your application. For example, we said your federal tax return or signed IRS 4506-T form. You could also put in your some financial information like your gross revenue, cost of goods sold, cost of operation, or another source of compensation. But sending that as soon as possible will will be dire in this situation because the deadline is coming up soon. Well, like Duncan said, the slides will be sent out, and you can see the email that you can send to in these slides. So that will be sent out after this webinar.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. And just to reiterate, the EIDL program is scheduled to close December 31st, right? So it's a short time frame.
Yes, correct.
Excellent. A question for Paige. So Paige, I think it's a good accounting question, is what can EIDL loan proceeds be used for? What are the acceptable uses, and then any non-acceptable uses that immediately stand out to mention?
Absolutely. This is a huge question that we get on a regular basis from business owners across the board, which is fantastic. The reason why is because the guidelines are very clear coming from the SBA. What they do not, they're more so focused on what they don't want business owners to spend it on. So what I might do is I'll focus on that first, and I'll come back to what you can focus it on or use it for, pardon me. So what the EIDL is not intended to be used for are dividends and bonuses, disbursements to owners. So in this case, it's draws and distributions, except when directly related to performance of services, repayment of stockholder and principal loans, expansion of facilities or acquisition of new fixed assets. I like to use the example of fixed assets being, purchasing camera equipment or new laptops. So it's not intended for that. Repair or replacement of physical damages, refinancing long-term debt. Now that's a big one that a lot of business owners have got stuck in, is they've gone to pay off their credit card with the EIDL loan. So it's not meant for pre-existing long-term debt prior to COVID. However, day-to-day expenses on the card to run the business, that would be acceptable. And the last two other options to avoid are paying down federal loans, so from the SBA or other federal agencies, and relocation. So onto the fun stuff, what you can use it for. So it is to be used for working capital. So again, these are day-to-day expenses. These are what you are allowed to use for the EIDL funds. So examples that we like to use for this are web hosting, inventory, office supplies, accounts payable, rent and utilities, merchant fees. You can use it for payroll as long as it is outside of the PPP funding time frame. So you can use it for payroll as well. And bookkeeping and accounting services, of course, as the IRS doesn't expect you to do it alone. One really big caveat that a lot of business owners aren't aware of is that within the contract, it states that it can review 5 years prior to the loan. They can review the year that you are currently in within the contract, within the 30-year term, and they can review 3 years from the date of maturation or from the day it's paid back in full. So that's a lot of years of bookkeeping and tax filing to be mindful of.
Yeah, so that's when I talked about the reporting requirements earlier. That's kind of what I was getting at, is that a lot of small businesses presently, Rita and I personally included, we're not as great at record keeping because businesses are more informal at that size as they probably should have been, especially, and that was kind of highlighted through the PPP and EIDL application processes. So I think if anything came across this year in terms of, call it professionalization of small businesses, is that the whole programs have sort of compelled small businesses to get more organized with their bookkeeping. So it seems like Bench would be a great service for that. So we've got, I have one more quick question here for you, Paige, that some people are a little bit confused about. And then at the end, I just want to give both the SBA a chance and you a chance to talk about any further resources or external or internal that you guys are doing at Bench or the SBA that you would recommend small businesses to take a look at. But before we get there, one last question, which is someone in our community asked, they got a small EIDL advance, but never ended up taking a loan. And they asked, what are the next steps for forgiveness? And because there generally seems to be a decent amount of confusion about the relationship between advance and then if you take an proper EIDL loan or not. So if you could just talk through that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very common question as well. And simply put, to let you know, anyone that was denied the loan but still received PPP, that's a-okay. If you also chose to simply take the advance and not the loan, that's also okay. The main key thing to keep in mind here is that it was written into law that the advance is a grant. So you don't need to be concerned about doing any repayment process or any process for forgiveness. It is in fact a grant in this case. So the EIDL advance, you can forget the word advance and see it as a grant. The only time to be mindful of it is if you also received, I hate to be redundant here, but the only time to be mindful of it is if you in fact received the PPP loan as well. That will be taken into consideration with your forgiveness as it stands today with the regulations we have in place.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. And I think I can speak for the entire small business community to say that, as Shelley sort of alluded to, there's been some talk or rumor that maybe there'll be a change of how the PPP and EIDL advance interact, which could maybe make it simpler by saving a whole bunch of small payments that small businesses would have to make otherwise. Okay, so I want to thank you both for attending, for everyone for attending, and I want to give the SBA, did you have any other resources or anything you want to re-highlight of where businesses should go or check out to get additional support?
Yeah, make sure that wherever your location is, you contact your resource partners. They're here to help you. They can direct you in the right location. They're in your area. So I know that we speak from the New Mexico SBA Twitter account and resource partners, but go to your local resource partners. You can find it through the SBA.gov website and type in your zip code or address, and they're free. We pay them to help you guys. So make sure that you check them out. They're free resource to you. And I don't know, Roxana or Shelley, do you have anything else to add?
Well,
Also, go ahead, Sarah.
I just think it's important to note that a lot of cities and counties do have their own grants. We have several here in our state, so constantly check those. Also, check the organizations within your community and your business organizations to see if they're aware of anything, because there's things that are popping up all the time, but because they're government agencies, they can't advertise. So it almost becomes like the best kept secret, similar to SBA. A lot of people didn't even know who SBA or what SBA did until all this came about. So there is some best kept secrets out there. So just look in your local areas and your state for any programs that do come up.
That's excellent. Thank you. And Paige, I want to give you a chance to tell us anything more, or how can businesses, for instance, how can they sign up for a consultation with Bench? So any services you provide that are relevant to what we talked about today, and how can businesses access them?
Awesome. Thank you, Duncan. So absolutely, what I do with our small but mighty team, and have done since the beginning of COVID impacting us all, is we offer our free consultations. So I work as a small business advisor here at Bench Accounting. As previously mentioned, you can go ahead and sign up for a free consultation with us. We're happy to talk about PPP, EIDL, day-to-day, business finances, so bookkeeping, tax filing, incorporation services, etc. Basically, anything under the sun as far as your business finances, we're happy to talk about them. You can sign up at bench.co/COVID-loan-tracker.consultation or consultation, and we're happy to connect. Yeah, it's a bit long. It's a bit of a tongue twister there. Can't say it 10 times fast. That's true.
You can optimize that. Sorry, community.
But nonetheless, you can absolutely click on that link and follow through. We do also have extensive amounts of articles that we have on our website and resources. So I'm happy to provide those to you, Duncan and Rita, to share with all of the viewers today, as well as if we are using that additional documents, they are listed in there as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. The SBA, Sarah, Roxana, and Shelley, and Paige, I'm really grateful for helping out the community. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.